All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of race number 1. Now, first week of the summer shutdown. I hope you guys aren't dying of boredom as much as I am. Let's get into it. I know I've seen a couple of the drivers already looks to be enjoying themselves. I've seen George on a super yacht, and Danny Rick is obviously back in the gym to increase on his fitness, which he said he would do. He said he would spend the break just in the gym to work on his fitness. Now, let's take some talking points from the last Grand Prix, the Belgian Grand Prix. Interesting race, and this was when we had the sprint race as well and sprint qualifying. Talking points from that, really, again, Red Bull showed their performance. However, there was this one accident between Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez. Now, it's 50-50, it looks like. It looks more like a racing incident to me. Let me know what you think. Do you think it was a racing incident, or was Lewis completely in the wrong? So obviously Lewis has picked up a 5-second penalty for that, and also 2 penalty points on his license, which I think is a bit unfair. I think you take into consideration the race conditions. It's a sprint race for one, so short laps, so really 5 seconds, that's just going to chuck him all the way to the back. Secondly, it was obviously very wet track, so the driving conditions weren't perfect. But should Lewis have yielded a bit? Could have Perez have perhaps given him a little bit more room? Who knows? So that's the main talking point. Obviously, Mercedes this weekend, they brought a load of new upgrades to the race. And unfortunately, it looks like they didn't really get a chance to actually dial them into the car. As if you have a look in the actual race, it looks like a lot of porpoising was shown, which isn't good for the Mercedes. Now, onto the race. So the starting grid for the Grand Prix, we had Charles in P1, Sergio Perez in P2, Hamilton in P3, Carlos Sainz in P4, Oscar in P5, and Verstappen in P6. So, but unfortunately, to start the race off, Oscar got a fantastic start off into the inside. Carlos locked on his brakes, and unfortunately, boom, they came together. Oscar had nowhere to go. He was either going into Carlos or he was going into the wall, and I think he actually chose the wall. So that ruined his race straight away after the first corner. And then later on, Carlos Sainz did retire as well. So very disappointing for both those guys. For potentially they could have been in fighting for the podium. Moving on to the race, obviously Max Verstappen does what Max Verstappen does and sliced his way through the field. I think after 3 laps, he managed to get himself, I think he started P6, and I think after the 3rd lap, I think he was P2 or P3. So really impressive again from Max and the RB19. However, there was signs and rumours, there were rumours that there was actually going easy this race. Can you believe it? Yeah, it seems to be like the Red Bull were actually too fast for this race. Again, they didn't have time to tune their car correctly. There was some concerns over tyre wear, especially for Perez. He was told on pretty much every single stint of tyre that he went on to lift and coast around certain corners, to manage the tyres, even though they was clearly out in front and dominating. And Max was just pushing like hell, and he managed to get a great performance. So a bit interesting. I've seen a couple of debates going online about that, so it'd be good to know what you guys think. So going on to P3, who finished in P3 was Charles Leclerc, so Ferrari, which is a great result for them. Obviously, Charles had pretty much a quiet race. It was a little bit of fighting with Lewis early on and around the pit stop strategy. However, it seems like Mercedes just couldn't dial up their car. These new updates wasn't performing as they should have. And like I mentioned before, if you looked at Lewis, who set the fastest lap in the race, his car was like this. So porpoising was back, which isn't a great sign. Hopefully Mercedes can look into this. They've obviously got a couple of weeks off now where no one's allowed to do anything. Everyone's gone for the summer holidays. Effectively, no engineers are allowed to look at any data. They need to be with their families, having barbecues and everything else. But after this couple of weeks, it'll be good to see what Mercedes can do to try and redevelop the car again. So yeah, overall, it was a really interesting race. I think there's a few talking points that I picked up on. Let me know what you think in your comments. And let's look forward to the next race, guys. Oh, so hard.